because we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about consent, we're talking about patriarchy, we're talking about white supremacy. All of these pieces play into sex work and pornography because that is how you start differentiating whether it's ethical or not.
Yeah.
And the word ethical really, like you said, is it's about intention,
Mhm.
and it's about sitting down and really being conscientious about how you make a decision,
Right. Yeah.
because there's not an absolutely right or wrong. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy.
We're back.
We're back and we have lots to talk about. Melissa, I didn't say anything to you. We've
I
not
know
talked
no
about
updates.
I know, because I was like saving it. I feel, you know, I talk a lot about this podcast and I don't care. We're having gay sex. And one of the things I've heard them say recently is they don't talk to each other because they want to like save it, you
Save
know?
the juicy conversation for the episode.
Is that a myth? Is that like how we talk about saving orgasms for like our partner or something?
Ooh, I'm not of that camp. I don't save any of those. I got plenty to spare.
Like, maybe should I be, do I need to wait? Do I need to save them? Or do I just have a plethora of stories, just like so many orgasms to give or receive or experience? I don't know. Well, our topic today made me think about, it was actually pertinent because I had a pornography talk with one of my people that I'm dating. I almost said partner. I don't think I can label any of them partners.
Mm.
I'm not going to use that word, but I did spontaneously have a pornography discussion with one of them.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was pretty short,
Mhm.
and it was like, do you watch pornography? Which we both just assumed both of us had at some point seen pornography.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If like, how did it even start? So it started with the question: the do you watch?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is a long distance person. So there is a lot of video time involved. And even when we're having sex together, it's with ourselves visually together.
Uh-huh.
So I think that makes it almost easier to have the discussion, because that's actually the only person I've had the discussion with out of the three folks that are in my rotation right now. Is that true?
Yeah. Like, is it a taboo topic to talk about porn?
Yes. Yes.
And if so, we're tackling it anyway.
It really brought up a lot of things from my childhood
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because, and I don't know how much I want to talk about this, but I think it's helpful. I think people enjoy hearing little bits and pieces. And if you don't want to hear this, fast forward like 5 minutes, because Melissa and I can talk about our own experiences, and then we'll go into like dialogue land of technical counseling theory. What I noticed happening was a lot of messaging that I had heard growing up. And we were in such a different, I'm a 1980s baby. So pornography on the internet was just picking up. So my experience was really based on like Playboys and
Yeah.
magazines
Mhm.
and strip clubs. That was like the big thing in my household, was my mom giving me way too much information about the things that my dad did. And so it was like very shamed. It was very, very shamed. And so when I started learning about things like sneaking magazines, it it felt so like quote unquote dirty, or just like this isn't something you're supposed to do. And then I will say, throughout dating many different folks, gender wise, sexuality wise, it is interesting the different views and noticing that. What do you notice? What's your take on, or what's your personal experience so far with all this?
Gosh, as you were saying that, Keely, I was thinking about how valuable it is for people to look back to what was your first experience with porn or exposure to. My mind actually went to, I can recall like my first like visual porn. It was prom
Yeah.
night. It was rough. Like, that was a lot. It's nothing that sexually turned me on. There were stilettos in places that I didn't need to see that. It was
So wait, so you saw
extreme.
porn. Wait, so your porn experience was at
It was
prom?
the after party of prom night, my junior year. I
Oh,
was not
okay.
sexually active at this time, and they
Okay.
had, porn on in the background because that's a great idea. Oh Lord. But yeah, thinking about your first times for me, actually, where my mind also went was like erotica, because that for me was
Yeah.
earlier, and I experienced pleasure, not just shock. And
So you
like
mean in the
horror.
form of like words. So you're clarifying
Yeah.
like erotica, like words. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, well, and I
Novels.
used to do that. I mean, I would read those romance novels.
There is a series I can't find that I like it. Oh my God. I have searched my parents' house high and low.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't find it on the internet. I've spent a lot of hours trying
So
to
not
find
VC
the series.
Andrews.
No, it was called Secrets. If anyone knows it, it was high school students. There were like 4 books. There's a scene that I just need to read again for my own brain to like, yes, you were always queer. I need that moment, but needless to say. We should also do intros because we could just go and not introduce ourselves.
Yes, for new viewers, new listeners. I think mainly listeners. Well, I am Keely C. Helmick. I'm the owner of Connective Therapy Collective. I am a queer relationship and sex therapist. I am non-binary babe, queer, non-monogamous currently, solo non-monogamous currently, and white, able-bodied. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I am Melissa DeSegurant. I am a licensed therapist at Connective Therapy Collective. I am white. I am relatively able bodied. I am in physical recovery and so excited about it. I'm bisexual, queer, I think works for me in general. I'm gender fluid. I use she and they pronouns. I think that covers it.
Wow, yeah.
Oh, poly. I'm poly. I'm a poly person and I am currently dating non monogamously.
Poly person dating non-monogamously. So to this pornography thing, I realized I also have another memory and I don't want to go down too much, but this is something I think is important, both the queer experience and unfortunately the misogyny and like really not cool things that folks can do in high school. I have this recollection. One of my first experiences with printed pornography was actually I was in theater, I was on tech crew. I was one of the only femme folks there. Everyone else was like these cis hetero high school, kind of like for those that grew up in Portland, Oregon area or in Oregon, like all I can say is like the I don't even know if we're supposed to use this word, but like hick or like Oregon country guys.
Mhm.
And so it was me and all those guys. And so one they would always call me lesbian. They'd be like, "Oh, you're a fucking lesbian." They'd harass me. And so there's this one pinnacle moment when 3 of them had pinned me down in the seat of the light booth
Mm,
and were like, "Oh, look at this. Don't you like this?" And they were shoving, and I was not turned on at all.
Like, of course not.
So they were shoving this like visual of naked women and like harassing me with pornography.
Yikes. Yeah.
And maybe in a different, I mean, talk about like come as you are, it depends on the setting you're in. There was nothing erotic about that, nothing sexual about that.
Yeah.
Just gross young men doing creepy things to somebody that they were threatened by because I didn't want to have sex with them. I didn't want to kiss them. I didn't want to date them.
Yeah.
And so they harassed me.
Yeah. Did it change, do you think, your experience of porn then moving forward? Having it like, is I'm here like forced upon you in a way by like people that there was no consent or trust or safety?
I think it just took a while for me between that and my experience with my mom who has OCD and her OCD comes out through not wanting anything to do with naked bodies.
Mm.
What happened is I found myself in this dichotomy of really enjoying naked bodies, but then so much shame. it's just like a swirling of lots of emotions.
Yeah.
And then not knowing how to navigate it. And so I think that's why you and we talked about talking about this subject today, because I think a lot of people are in that situation of how to navigate it, because our stories, multiplied by millions of people's stories of how their interactions with pornography, it's often becomes very value based. There is a view that's very specifically around religion,
Mhm. Mhm.
though as far as I know, I don't think any of the scripts of organized religion says anything about naked bodies.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, right.
So, but I think that I do want to preface, as we do in a therapy session, I want to preface for myself, letting folks know I am biased.
Mhm. Mhm.
And my bias comes from an ethical standpoint around actually being an ASEX certified sex therapist, that I don't believe in the term sex addiction.
Mhm.
So I want to be really clear on starting out this part of the episode, kind of diving into pornography.
I wanna echo
Yeah.
that too, and especially in my training, here through Connective Therapy Collective, I too don't see, sex addiction as a thing, and we could talk more about that. Also, part of my population that I work with, I do work with sex workers, so that is part of my bias as well. I don't come to the table saying that sex work is bad or shameful or something to judge.
So then how do we navigate this idea? And then there's these verbiage thrown around about ethical porn use, or this value around how mainly women, but there's a lot of other folks involved in, pornography. And even when we're saying the word pornography, it's, clarifying like sex work, and whether it's through the phone, it's visual, it's escorts, it's strip club, all of these different arenas. When, and there is no clear definition of pornography. Legally, it still just is, oh, well, you will know it when you see it.
Oh gosh.
And this interesting, like, differentiation, which I'll say really feeds into capitalism and a hierarchy of specific classes, when we talk about class as far as like income based, that we have this view of nudity as art
Mhm.
and then nudity as pornography.
Yeah, right, right.
And so we're trying to navigate that. And again, going back to, I don't want to veer too far off, but just bringing these things up so that when we're thinking about how we bring up this topic with a partner or a new lover or whoever, our boo, our nesting partners, what that looks like, knowing all of these things come into play.
Yeah. Yeah, part of the ethical piece seems to be having intention around those conversations so we have them and knowing what comes up for us. I'm also interested and admittedly not the expert or resource to go to for this, but on interested in finding out, how do people ethically consume pornography? Are there kinds of porn? Yes, is my answer to this question already, but that are unethical. And how do we avoid that and find the kinds of porn that are ethical?
Yeah. And so we are, to note, we are posting some things that we know to be ethical, in the sense that people that are doing the videos and engaging in the sexual acts are actually getting paid for their work, and that it is verified that those folks in fact are consenting,
Yeah.
because we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about consent, we're talking about patriarchy, we're talking about white supremacy. All of these pieces play into sex work and pornography, because that is how you start differentiating whether it's ethical or not.
Yeah.
And the word ethical really, like you said, is it's about intention,
Mhm.
and it's about sitting down and really being conscientious about how you make a decision,
Right. Yeah.
because there's not an absolutely right or wrong.
Totally, totally. Yeah. And it's a little bit of a tangent, but I want to note it because maybe it will come back later. I'm thinking specifically about queer pornography. And like
Yeah.
I've named this in a way previous episode, maybe season one. I not that I like my gator is not like perfect or anything, but I've watched a lot of porn that was advertised to be lesbian porn that did not I didn't see any queerness in the
Yeah.
video, and therefore it was like a huge turnoff to me. And so I don't know if that quite makes the cut as being ethical or unethical, but that's another piece for queer folks, like finding legitimate queer porn and not straight people pretending to be queer for an audience. There's a really big difference for me.
Well, for the male gaze. We're talking about the
Yeah.
male gaze. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't get off on watching two straight girls pretend to be queer. It's like it's not good for me. I want to see queer people have real queer sex. So let's
Yeah.
bring the queer piece into.
Yes. And in fact, right now, our awesome producer, Cardinal, is looking because I had seen some resources and I've looked at some resources before that are super queer. And so we're going to post some of those links either in our social media or on the website, most likely the website, so it can just stay there. We start off with the idea with before even having a conversation with a partner is checking in with ourselves and what are our thoughts, as an individual, what are your thoughts around pornography? What are your thoughts around nudity, sex, visual, whether it's magazine, whether it's online, differentiating between, is there a differentiation between going to a strip club, viewing a video, viewing a movie, reading erotica? Because again, we're lumping these things together right now for our discussion. But
Right.
when you're trying to figure out for yourself, what is your line? What is your, what are your preferences? If anything, what are your views on it? Because before you talk to another person, y'all need to know what it is you think about these things for yourself.
Right. And what comes up, like we've, I think, both demonstrated now, what comes up from your past? What were you taught about it? What was your first exposure? How has that shifted your views now? And again, not necessarily with the intention of changing how you feel about anything,
Yeah.
but so that you can go into these conversations informed.
Yes. Yes. So that's the first step. And then noticing your body, noticing the thoughts that come up, really sitting with it. Do you feel shame if you're getting turned on by it?
Mhm.
Are you, a lot of folks come from like gender and feminist studies. And if you look at second wave feminism, this was a huge debate. It still is within the umbrella of feminism is whether are you a true feminist if you are okay with pornography and this split between sex workers and trans folks and really a certain section of feminism really excluding so much of sex positivity, sex workers, and trans folks.
Yeah. And it takes the assumption, that stance of like, all sex work is bad, all this is bad. It's all, it takes the stance that sex is shameful.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. That is why I was closeted for 31 years. So I'm away from that camp. It is not shameful. It is also okay to decide it's not for me. You get to decide that. You get to not like porn if you don't like it. That's fair.
Yes.
But
Yes.
let's not judge other people for what's working for them.
And this is where it starts getting really sticky, but we'll talk about it after the conversation because there's the pre-conversation,
Yeah.
figuring out what you are okay with for yourself.
Mhm.
Then there's the actual conversation. There's the aftermath of the conversation.
Yes.
And I want to make a quick note when we're talking about this, similar to what information we talk to about different people within a non-monogamous polyamorous dynamic. I think there is a question of do you have to have this conversation with a partner or partners.
Mhm.
Do you have to disclose whether or not you look at pornography? And I'm looking at all
I already hear the issues. There's so many issues because I hear the want perhaps for a first partner to want to know
yeah.
and want to control that behavior, which I don't love. And
Yes.
I ask myself too, as you say that, well, say we say yes, you have to disclose that. Does that mean I have to disclose every time I orgasm? Do you need to know how many times I masturbate every day? Like, what else are you entitled to know about how I access sexual pleasure?
Well, and that's the yes. And so that piece of it is as we think through, okay, so someone's going through individually thinking about how they feel about pornography, thinking about their own use, their own thoughts around it, their preferences, all of those things. There's also this question of what is our own individual sex life and what is our sex life with other folks?
Yeah.
Because I talk about that a lot in couples counseling. Like there is a sense of autonomy as a human that we get to have our own individual experiences. We get to have our own fantasies. We get to have our own, in fact, we know as a sex therapy community and as a sex educator and sex coach community, we know that if individuals are exploring their bodies, exploring their own fantasies, doing their things individually, the more they're doing that, the better sex they have with other people. So we know how important that is.
Yes.
And so, how much another human gets to know about that, this is privacy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm continuing to grapple with this concept as probably the whole episode I will. So we'll see where I come to at the end of the time. But I can see how it can be beneficial to have those conversations with the partner in
Yes.
either clarifying ways or connective ways. Like if there was somebody I was dating who they have whatever their experiences are that they're entitled to, they have an absolute no tolerance rule for porn. I can't handle my partners watching porn. I would want to know that so that I could exit that relationship. I would want to know because
I love wait, hold
I
on,
mean,
Melissa. I
literally,
love how you said that.
because
Let's
the
be
part that would
clear.
I would exit the scene, exit stage
Yeah.
right.
Existing. Yes, that if
The lights
someone's
come
like,
down.
no porn. All
And
right.
it's not to shame. It's not to
No.
say you're bad and I don't want to be in a relationship with that. What it's saying is, again, I want to show up authentically and ethically in every relationship I'm in, whether it's sexual or not. And for me, it would feel unethical to know that I am a porn consuming person
Yeah.
to be in a relationship with someone who I know has a really big issue with that. That
Yeah.
to me, that wouldn't be fair to either of us.
So that's something to think about
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
individuals. So let's fast or not fast forward, but let's step into okay, you've done your work individually. Yes, I like to view porn individually. I have fantasies. I'm an autonomous being
Mhm.
that touches myself however I feel like touching myself. Okay. Now you want to have the conversation with your partner or
Mhm.
partners.
So again, it's not like that sucks. I don't want anything to do with you. It's the same as what you've said before. If people had like
Yeah.
no kids on their profile, cool,
Yes.
awesome. Thank you for letting me know. I'm leaving. You know?
Wait, so do we put this wait, do I need to put this on my dating app? I am a consumer of porn. I do consume
Let's list all the websites. Let's
Here's
list
all the
my
erotica books.
keywords.
Here's a book.
What do you put in the search bar? I actually have this conversation with friends all the time.
Real. So I and I think that's when we think about scarcity model, when we think about fears,
Mhm.
I think that is a really clear reason why many people actually don't want to have this talk
Yeah.
because they are worried what the person's going to say.
Yeah.
And then that may shift, well, that is going to shift the relationship dynamic and it may cause some really big cognitive dissonance. How do we start that off?
It's funny because we've said this before, and this is where I think maybe the kink community wins because
Yes.
I've actually had partners like we didn't even have the discussion, but when
Yeah.
sex started to be talked about, like, well, what, like not porn specifically, right? But just like What do you like? What
Yeah.
have you experienced? Right. I've literally had people send porn and be like, this, I like this. Right. And it's because some of those dynamics are maybe better explained visually than like trying to verbally describe what you're talking about. So I've seen that with kink all the time. Like, yeah, I want a dom who does this. I want a sub who does,
Yeah.
and it's used as a as a resource again to bring people closer together. So
Melissa,
not
that
get
is a
everyone's
great.
way, but like that's a thing that happens.
Well, and I think when we're talking about ethical porn use, or we're calling this ethical, you just brought up a great point, because part of that is looking at pornography as either entertainment or education. Entertainment, something we can use modeling, but that it should not be our sex education.
Yeah.
Let's clarify that. So
Yep.
yes, using it as like, oh, this is an interesting like research, like different positions or different ideas,
Yeah.
definitely for entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's supplementary, but we
Yeah.
don't want it to be sex education.
No, that's where my sex education first went wrong. Then I went to the school talks and it got way worse.
And
So
it
yeah,
got way worse.
that's a really good point.
So maybe also in our resources, we need to have our sex ed.
Absolutely. Yeah, real sex ed links. That's
Yeah.
really important. It can be a useful tool for figuring out if you haven't explored anything sexually, really. It can be a
Yeah.
tool to figure out dynamics like, ooh, wow, things really freak me out now. I don't know if that's my thing, but like that dynamic, like, yeah, I really like that, that can be helpful. But again, uh, part of it is also knowing what porn you're watching. And again, whether it's if it's just presentational, if it's accurate to what sex really looks like, or if it's a facade.
Yeah. And so there's resources, I know there's also resources. There's a site where couples contribute
Hmm. Hmm.
videos. So that's another way to know with consent, knowing that the folks that are creating the content are actually also saying, please view this. I mean,
Right.
obviously, hello, talk about a kink. I mean, voyeurism, or, you enjoy being
Yeah.
watched.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
perfect platform to be like, hey, y'all want to like see some porn?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think then moving into the conversation piece is they're wanting to be really clear that we don't owe, as individuals, we don't owe anyone anything.
Hmm.
We don't owe our partners they don't quote unquote get to know everything we consume.
Hmm.
They don't get to go into our computer and look at our search history unless we invite them.
Right.
So I think that's really important. That I think this is a great conversation to have. I definitely advocate for it, and saying you get to choose what you want to share.
Yeah. Maybe a good entry into that is instead of asking, do you watch porn? Maybe it feels better to go about it, say something to the effect of, what are your feelings about porn? This could be
Yeah.
part of the initial conversation about sex, that stars conversation that
Yeah.
everyone modeled for us. You can add this in there, right? Like,
Oh,
okay,
I
cool.
wonder if she has that. You know what? I will text her, because I bet if she doesn't have that in her upcoming book,
Gonna be starps.
yeah. Starts.
We're gonna add that P in there. And I just went a totally different direction with
Do
that
we need
comment.
to add that
We
P?
don't, we don't.
Do
We're okay right now. Oh my God.
We're allowed to go there.
This is what happens when we start talking about pornography. Truly, though, you're having a conversation already about, protection, STIs, and all that. Hey, what are your feelings about porn?
Yeah.
Some people enjoy consuming porn together, and that's part of how they
Yes.
relate and connect. You know, or they maybe they're platonic and they still enjoy watching porn together. Like, there's so many different
Well, there's
ways.
ace folks. Yeah, there's ace folks that enjoy watching porn but don't want to engage in certain sexual ways
Yeah.
with other people. Mhm.
Yeah. And similar to our fantasies, right? We might have a
Yeah.
fantasy that our pleasure is when it lives in our fantasy life, but it's not something we actually want to enact. That can happen with porn too. We can enjoy certain things, but not want to enact that. So again, it's why having that self-knowledge is helpful, so that we can communicate that clearly to a partner. Like, I love watching this. That's a boundary for me. That's a no-go in terms of actually doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think again, as we talk about this, looking at how do we research, how do we think about, how do we talk more about it? Because actually, in this idea of being more ethical or being more intentional about how we utilize pornography, is we want to talk about it more, because the more it's talked about, the less shame. Anything
Right.
that is talked about more, then the shame is reduced. And we know that. I mean, Brene Brown talks about it. I don't think Brene Brown talks about pornography. It'd be great if she did. Love to hear. I don't even know. Does Brene Brown even talk about sex?
I don't know. I mean, vulnerability, how could we not?
Yeah, but we also know that there's a lot of couples therapists and marriage family therapists that don't talk about sex. So
Right. Yeah.
Brene could definitely not talk about sex. I don't know. I'm gonna look into that. Side note, whatever. Hi, Brene Brown. If she ever listens to this, that'd be the most amazing thing ever. No, there's other people, but
She'll
it'd be pretty.
specifically pick the one on pornography to listen to if she ever finds our podcast.
Why would she? Of all the humans? Though, I mean, you never know. Like, I'm reaching for the stars, but Brene Brown wouldn't be the person. Who would I reach for the stars for? Okay, I'm digressing. Listeners, if there is someone who should we reach for the stars for? Because I'm all about getting whatever guest we can get on here. And like, hello. Thought about Emily Nagoski. She's still cis hetero though. So like, but I did think about her, FYI. Anyway, so vulnerability, thinking about how we think and talk about pornography, talking about it more to reduce the shame. And then we get to still have our privacy. And I think sometimes privacy almost is equated to shame,
Yeah.
but there's a difference between privacy and secret. And I love this. And I know we've talked about this before, and I keep clarifying it for myself and wanting to help people clarify for themselves the difference between privacy and secret keeping.
Yeah. And just to give listeners a chance to hear what that could look like say I didn't want to talk about my porn life, but it was asked of me, on a date or something, a way to be transparent and authentic, but also hold boundaries if I wanted something to be more private. I could say, it's something that it's part of my solo sex life with myself, but it's not something I feel comfortable discussing with partners.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fair. I get to make that choice.
And now I feel like people are going to ask the question. I mean, you did a really good job modeling what you would do, but I do think that people are going to now be thinking, "Oh my gosh, what if I meet someone that's super rad, I'm super connected to, or I've been in a relationship for a year and I use porn and they don't like it."
Mhm,
Or I'm not okay with my partner using porn and I just learned that they consume porn.
mhm. Right. Then it's taking a deep breath. That's when we pause.
Pause.
I am of the philosophy now in my life and my point in relationships where I would rather things be transparent and authentic. And if it doesn't work or if it means that the connection needs to end, I would rather know that now than in a decade.
Yeah.
I've already been through one round of that. So, but I also don't believe that people's porn usage or comfort needs to perfectly align for them to have a sexual relationship together. I think there's a lot of room to hold difference,
Yeah.
and to hold space for someone else to be authentically them and not make their habits about us. And when I say pause and take a breath, if I'm in that position where I have a no tolerance rule, I can't deal with pornography, and I now my partner, I found out that they watch porn. I have work to do. I have to
Yeah.
really look inward and figure out, can I authentically be in this relationship and not just tolerate, because that has a tension in it. Can I accept this about my partner, or do I need to change this relationship?
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. Yes, and that's where it gets interesting conversations. I find, because I've this conversation comes up in therapy
Yeah.
with couples. And so that's where recognizing, is it linked to a specific value, or is it something that you just don't necessarily like,
Right.
or what is it about that? And is it a continued conversation? Because I will often hear, and this is what I've seen when I've had these conversations, the ones that I'm coming to my mind has been with cis hetero monogamous couples.
Mhm.
And often the dynamic, and this is queer specific podcast, but this is what I'm just thinking of right now. So that there is this, and I've heard this from queer folks as well, though, queer cis women, queer AFAB folks, is that the sex industry, pornography treats women poorly, or there's this blanket idea.
Mhm.
And obviously not to say that there is not times, I mean, we know that, women often the videos and the stuff online benefit cis white hetero white men. We know that women can be treated really poorly. We know that trans women, there's so much violence against trans women within the sex work industry. So we know all of that. So it's not to say that's not there, but in actuality, the more we talk about it, the more that it's legalized, the less in the shadows it is, we're actually keeping folks more safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the piece. So can there be nuanced conversations if a person's coming into the dialogue, if this couple that I'm thinking of, or couples that I think about generically, where the woman is saying, oh, this is not feminist, or this is anti-woman, sometimes I'll hear that. This is the heart of this episode, this conversation is, can there be a conversation between the two people that talks about what kind of porn would you feel okay with in this relationship?
Right. Yeah.
Can that nuance, can the two of you talk, can the person, in this case, when I was walking through this with this couple, because the couple wanted to stay together. And so then pulling this conversation out and having, in this example, was this hetero man who then started examining his own use. And I did repeat just how I just said a couple minutes ago, you don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what would it look like? And I asked you, do the two of you even know the concept of when I say ethical porn, or,
Yeah.
ethical porn use, or being more intentional, like the words that you and I keep using? I think that might outrank the ums this episode.
I think
How
so.
many times I say intentional
Yeah.
or ethical. Ethical is also a loaded word, by the way. So that being said, again, back to this conversation, these are nuanced things to think about. Anything else that you want to add around the actual conversations?
Mm. Slow down, slow
Yeah.
down, especially if it's a loaded topic for you. Breathe, literally. I know, again, we say that too, but just slow yourself down. You don't need to be in a reactive space. It's just a conversation. Nothing is happening to you in that moment aside from having a conversation. The more we can slow down, part of the reason that's so important is to allow our nervous system to settle so that our critical thinking stays online and we can actually
Yeah.
have intention when we talk about it versus being reactive and being emotionally back in trauma that we've experienced.
Yeah. So then we're looking at what, and I just realized when you were saying that to Melissa, that we're also not talking about this idea. It's not just necessarily a one-time conversation. I mean, maybe it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
but maybe it's something that y'all check in with when you check in around your agreements, your relationship agreements, or when you talk about different things. Or maybe after this conversation, maybe you've never watched pornography before together, but maybe you're thinking, oh, what would that be like? And let's be clear, it could just be a movie with some hot sex scene. It doesn't have to be in the quote unquote specific category of pornography online.
I probably first consumed visual pornography before my prom. Titanic came out in theaters. And I
Oh,
consumed it with my mom.
oh my God. My
It
mom,
was awkward.
my mom would not let me see any of those. She would sit there at the television and turn off the commercials or
Oh,
turn off kissing scenes. She literally sat there with the remote control controlling whatever came on the TV, and I barely even had cable, so this was like she would freak out if there was a bra ad, like, if someone was in a bikini. So,
yeah.
and then my dad's house was like, whatever, yeah, so, yeah, you're right, I'm sure.
Yeah. Gosh, one other thing though that now comes to mind, going back to the conversation, I would get out of the headspace of this has to be it's right or wrong, or
Yes.
yes or no. Like it's not no, we're not gonna simplify it to that. What I would invite people to do is embody curiosity about themselves and about their partner. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you watch porn. What's that like for you? What do you get out of it? What right? Like instead of, oh, I don't like, I'm gonna put judgments on you because that doesn't align with me, right? Get curious about someone else's experience.
Yeah, yeah, and active listening, yeah, like you said, sitting with it.
Mhm, mhm,
And so then how do you practice compassion for yourself? However this conversation,
mhm.
and whether it's the beginning of a sexual interaction, maybe you have this conversation before you are sexually involved with somebody, or it's early on in the dynamic, or you have been dating or together for many years and this conversation comes up, how to navigate after the conversation.
Mhm. It's like we're still planning an episode on this, but it's aftercare.
It is.
It's aftercare from the conversation,
Aftercare for the pornography conversation.
Yeah, because it can be for some folks, this might feel like silly, like, oh, we talked about it, whatever, it's fine. For others, I guess we're assuming for some people, it may be a really difficult conversation to have, especially if you've never talked about it before with the partner. So there may be lingering feelings or sensitivity or a need to reconnect in a way that's not about this topic.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe it's a time limited conversation.
Yeah.
If it feels loaded or if it feels like it's bringing up a lot of different feelings, and if the 2 of you or more than 2 of you have different views on it, it may be something to limit and come back to the topic.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be something helpful to work through in therapy where you have a neutral partner
Yeah.
to navigate, especially if you're on like different sides of the coin. And that also does have the container aspect where you leave it in the therapy room, unless you're directed to have more conversations, compartmentalize and leave it there and then come back to it, next appointment.
Yeah, and then recognizing, so I think that navigating it as a couple, going back to some of the pieces where looking at porn use intentionally, are we paying for it? Are the people that we're viewing, are they getting compensated for the work they're doing?
Are they
Is it
able?
consensual?
Yeah.
Yeah, are they able to give consent? So
So,
all of those pieces
mhm,
are the things you can navigate for yourself, but then, with your partners as well.
mhm. Yeah. 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 And the aftercare, even for yourself, I can recall being vulnerable. I definitely wasn't raised with a sex positive framework. And
Yeah.
that's not just from my family. Most of that is from school education, everything that we're taught about sex, where it's like, don't have sex or you'll get pregnant and you'll get STDs and you'll die. That was my takeaway from sex education back in the day.
How we continue as a species, I don't know. We have
I
7 billion
literally,
plus people.
I didn't know that like people with vulvas could orgasm until I was almost out of high school. And when I first heard it, I'm like, no, no way. Absolutely not. Like, how sad is that? My God. Many
I
years
know.
I missed out.
Well, I got to have the pornography talk with my oldest child last week
Mhm.
because of prepping for this. With my child, and she's 14, by the way. And I was like, do you and your friends watch pornography? And she just kind of looks at me. And of course, it's a car conversation. Anyone who has teens knows it's always about being in the car, because then they don't have to like actually look at you. They can like
Yeah.
look forward out the window as you're talking, but they
Yeah.
can't go anywhere.
Right? But then it's time limited because you get somewhere and it's over. It's a great strategy.
And so she's like, "Oh God, mom." And then she's like, and she's so my child. She was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if I like it or not." She's like, "It's so much about the male gaze."
Mhm, mhm.
At 14, you know what that word is? Are you kidding me? You know that concept? Like, we're obviously
Like
doing
I knew that like after like 2 swipes on chat roulette. That was the big thing in college, right?
yeah, college.
Yeah.
She's a freshman in high school. It's
No,
so rad.
I met high school.
It's so rad.
Guess what I was gonna say is for people who may be just exploring porn for the first time, for
Yeah.
me, I had this experience and maybe similar to masturbation, although I have a different path with that, but where pleasurable in the moment, finish my time, and then all of a sudden it's like the shame just sits in and I would go through this ferociously deleting my history, deleting all the like so much shame. So I just want to name that can happen
Yeah.
where you can get really into it and then it's like a wall of shame. So the aftercare is really important for yourself too. And noticing
Yeah.
if your inner critic is acting up or whatever's happening for you so you can start to be really gentle with yourself. And I haven't done a lot of research to know, like, I mean, chemically, there's a big drop, there's a big change, right? From like orgasm moment to like that, what happens next. But just be aware there may be some lingering shame to work through that appears, after consuming porn.
Yeah. Shame after orgasm.
Hmm.
I mean, that also shows up in other sexual
Yeah.
interactions, but yeah, for sure surrounding pornography. And so I think this is a topic we can definitely talk about again. I would love to have someone in to talk about it, but hopefully this was helpful for those that are prepping for a conversation.
Yeah, we're
What's
trying to get the
working well?
conversation, yeah, conversation started, figure out what's working.
Yes, please let us know. Let us know how the conversation goes for you all. So on to our favorite part is queer joy.
Yep.
Should I? I mean, I know what I want to talk about. Do you know what you want to talk about?
I don't. I think I
Okay, should I start?
porn. So yeah, you should
You're,
start.
you're like, wait a minute. I've just been thinking about porn. Well,
Like that's what's on my mind now.
well, I'm going to use some words that are very stereotypical, and I'm going to use certain labels because I'm just going to call myself out for being such a fucking lesbian, though I don't really jive with that term as an identity. But what I'm about to talk about is like every other lesbian couple TikTok people. I officially am dating someone long distance.
Yay.
Yes. We had a date last Tuesday and she asked if we wanted to date and I said yes. And we had the discussion about non-monogamy because we decided that we don't want to be monogamous. I mean, I didn't want to be monogamous. I was actually scared that she asked if I want to date her, but then I was scared she's gonna be like, well, but I want to be monogamous. And I was gonna be like, that's not gonna work. And she was totally chill. She's like, yeah, I down for the non-monogamy thing. And she talked a little bit about her history. Yay for previous partners because she'd been dating somebody who's also non-binary. Yay. And non-binary, non-binary and non-monogamous. I try to combine those two words.
Non-binary.
Non-monogamous. Yeah.
No.
And so we got to have this cute date, have this great discussion, over video, like a video date. And I'm like, okay, we're out of the pandemic and now I'm on a fucking I've never done this was my first video date.
Yeah. Oh, I
But
love
like I
that. They're so great.
after the pandemic, what the hell? Like going backwards. But it's been so great. And of course, she booked her flight to
Yay.
Portland. So
In-person great dates are great too.
yes, in person is great. So she'll be here later this month, which is super exciting. But it's just so fucking gay. It is so gay that I have a long distance person now and all the things that come with that. But it has been so much fun and I enjoy it so much. And I'm enjoying all these dynamics. And it's just so yeah, I mean, I literally feel like a teenager. That's the queer joy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this person and we like text and we're on video and she wants to date me. Like that whole verbiage of like, do you want to date was like so adorable. Oh my gosh. So
I love it.
that's my queer joy. Lots of queer joy, but that's my story for the week.
Yeah, amazing. I guess I'll go on the dating theme too. I'm dating someone locally. We haven't had a conversation about like they know that I do a podcast, but we haven't talked about we're like moving very slowly and it's very new connection. So I'm holding a lot of boundaries around what I share about them
Yeah, yeah.
because they're not we haven't they haven't had an opportunity to consent to that. So what I will share is about myself because this date was the first opportunity to get a little bit more dressed up. And I mean, I haven't dressed up since like 2 years ago, right? Like it's been a long time. Like I'm
Yeah, yeah,
very long time.
yeah.
I have not worn heels in a long time. Also, I did just start physical therapy. So I'm like, if I hurt myself, my PT is gonna kick my butt. Like, uh-oh, because I have an ankle and knee thing going on. But I also then had the experience, and I'm being careful about how I say it because again, I don't want to give too much away about this person. I was having the experience of not knowing how I wanted to dress up and feel complete in my gender presentation for the evening
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because I am gender fluid. And one thing I've been noticing is how I gravitate towards different presentations based on who I'm with and who I'm like trying to impress, I guess.
For sure.
And I was like, you know what? Like, I feel queer. I want to be queer. Like, and I want to be whatever. So, needless to say, I will tell you that I ended up with the awesome outfit. I was definitely overdressed. So that was embarrassing.
Well,
However,
in Portland, you're overdressed no matter what.
yeah, but I will own it. It was great. I had 4.5-inch heels. They were
Woo!
like, come on now. Like I had ankle support. And it was the funniest thing. It was like I didn't have the right jacket because we're between seasons.
Oh,
You know, it was
yeah.
too much. I don't really have summer jackets. So I'm like, I guess I'm wearing a blazer. So
Right.
I felt like so genderqueer and so hot and like my blazer and it was great.
Awesome. I think you need to
So
post do you have a picture? I
I
think
did
we
not. I will
ah,
have to we'll have to have like an occasion to dress.
okay.
Monday, yeah. When we record this, it's not happening on, on a Monday morning for me. I'm a comfy person. But yeah, I was rocking a blazer and it felt pretty queer and I felt great. So
Neat.
that was my queer joy. It was super win for me.
Awesome. Well, I love it. I'm loving all the genderqueer stuff, of course, and just wanna put out there, y'all, I'm doing the thing for a minute before we say goodbye. Please, please do review. Reviews is what gets people to listen, so please do review. Please rate us. Please tell us what you think of this, and I hope all of you have a queer and joyful week.
Thanks for listening to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy, a podcast by the Connective Therapy Collective. Hosted by Keely C. Helmick and Melissa DeSeguron, with audio edited and produced by me, Cardinal Marking. Intro music is by Bad Snacks. Outro music by Victoria Instrumental. If this episode made you smile or think, tell us about it. If you hated it, tell us about that. Review us on iTunes or Spotify. Yes, you can review on Spotify now. Or send us an email